they donated that land, got a tax write-off that helped their pro forma, and we were able to then take that partnership to DNR and get a land water conservation fund grant to build out the park with zero tax dollars, local tax dollars in the project, because the land donation for the developer, that's a write-off for them, is the in-kind match for our park build out for the community. So now you have this central park going through the neighborhood that connects to our greater trail and ecosystem that we're building out, with playground connecting to commercial retail.
Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry Podcast today. I have an incredible guest. My name is Jonathan Mason, and I'm your host of the Jentry Podcast. But with me today, I have Ben Lips, who is the town manager of the town of Cumberland in Indiana. He brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to the podcast, and I'm so thankful to have him. Before we get too far into it, Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on.
The pleasure is definitely all mine. Now, I always have to do this. I have to get right into it. So please tell me, what is the special sauce of Cumberland? What makes it the best place to live in the United States?
Being here for quite a long time, I'd have to say the people and the quality of life, the people are very unique in their identity, very unified. We are Cumberland. As we are rapidly growing, they're still we are Cumberland, and making sure everyone's a part of that Cumberland vibe and community. They focus on arts, culture, trails, and, the really important things, in my opinion, the fun stuff. So if you come here, that's kind of the vibe and energy you're going to get.
I love that. Like a true community. I started smiling when you said, "We are Cumberland." I think that is a powerful message. And I always say you can learn so much about a community by learning about who their leaders are. So please tell me, what was childhood like, and what led you into a life of public service?
Childhood was, I think, a typical Midwest childhood. Relatively quiet. I was a chaotic child, maybe a little bit more higher energy, rambunctious, more so as I got older, but always in the name of fun, I would say. But grew up in Greenfield, Indiana, which is just down the road from Cumberland, actually. It's the county seat, so a typical county seat experience with your courthouse and your traditional downtown that's walkable. Everybody kind of knew everybody that back at that point in time, when whatever church you went to was basically like your group when I was growing up. That's kind of Midwest community vibe that way. But I am the second youngest out of a family of 5 kids. So a lot of turmoil. It was 3 sisters and a brother. So there was definitely different dynamic. Mom, as a stay-at-home mom, helped take care of all of us. My dad was traditional office working, take care of all of us, get home, 5, 6 p.m. in the evening, and typical, like I said, typical Midwest upbringing, I think.
That's incredible. Now, what do you think triggered or kind of led you to getting into public service?
I've always felt called to help people. So from the time I was a kid, very empathetic of classmates, other kids in youth group, friends, and even really adults, seeing people in need or who need help. I've always been driven to do that, but I've always been driven to serve in a role. I actually wasn't anticipating necessarily local government or this level of service at all growing up as a child. I thought it'd be through environment and kind of cleaning up the world for people and helping that way through sciences, which I started kind of down that path. But I also thought military service would probably be where I landed, but had some significant events that happened in my life that kind of changed that trajectory. So yeah.
It sounds like it wasn't your initial goal, but you were able to change trajectory and make it that you're still serving. Maybe not exactly in the way that you thought, but still serving. And I think that's important. Now, I'd love to kind of shift to the X's and O's of Cumberland. What are some of the priorities or strategic goals that you guys have in the town of Cumberland?
We have been focusing heavily on community development and economic development. For us, a lot of that is growing our housing stock. We are one of the fastest growing communities in the state of Indiana right now. Community of under 7,000 today, but we've proved enough housing to go to around 13,500. We have more housing development in the work. So a lot of that strategy is focused on how do we work with our elected officials, work with our zoning code and those things to make housing a priority and make housing attainable within our community. We know we need rooftops to further the quality of life on that strategy too, to bring the amenities, retail, commercial, and those things that people want. And as part of that strategy, we are using it to constantly extend our trails and build new parks and kind of grow that quality of life front, which I was talking about. We also focus heavily on our events and tourism to attract that housing growth. So we have festivals and events pretty much every single month of the year. Our probably largest event is our summer concert series, Blues Beer and Barbecue. We have Grammy award-winning blues artists, international touring acts. So it's pretty big for a small town. We'll partner with some of the local blues artists to help develop and shape that. But a lot of it too is putting in good policies and guardrails into place. It's been a focus of mine and the council that I serve, making sure we're protecting the 10, 20, 50, 100-year needs of the town through good utility infrastructure policies, good financial policies that go above and beyond kind of the federal and state mandates that will protect budget cycles year over year, good and cash investment policies, balanced budget policies, things like that. So we try to do everything very holistically, not look at this is one thing, everything's tied together, right? Economic development is on a foundation, I always say, of infrastructure and public safety. We want housing, so we have to have good infrastructure that the housing can rely on and a safe community that people want to move to. Then you kind of go up from there and you do have that quality of life, your trails and your parks and those items that bring people in. Going up from there, you have your jobs and that kind of focus that you have to start building. And then really, you just have to make it accessible, right? There's so much zoning reform talk and everything all over the country. There's really drastic, aggressive things out there legislatively, and there's some middle of the road and some complete opposite where people are trying to almost zone out housing from their communities. And then there's people that are trying to do common sense approaches, which we think we are very much doing here, trying to work with builders and developers and the community to say, how do we bring the housing here that betters the community, our existing residents, our future residents, and make it attainable, but also desirable housing. So,
Wow, that is quite the balance. But I really appreciate how you look at everything holistically. Like you have to have a community that people want to live in, a community that people can work in, a community that people can feel safe in, and how that all interplays. And then under that, you just got to have the roofs for people to live in. So I really like that. Now, I want to press a little bit more because it sounds like everything is going well, and you're going from have the ability to go from 7,000 up to 13,500 in the future. But I always want to get under that. Is there any challenge that you would see when it comes to housing? Like I've heard people say we don't have enough land, or the land's too expensive, or we don't have this one type of housing. Like our housing stock is focused around two types, and or we're looking for workforce housing, or we're looking for senior housing. Is there maybe one challenge that sticks out to you that you guys are looking to solve?
Just one, Jonathan? So like, I can give you a list. But
Let's run through it. I'd
yeah,
love to hear what's affecting housing.
a very good one you hit on is product typology. We do a lot of housing studies and we refresh that year over year, actually. And we're looking at demographics within that, needs. And what we see is what everyone's talking about is missing middle, right? So you have everyone still wanting to build your traditional 4 or 5 bedroom homes that don't match what the retirement community is looking for to move out of their 4 or 5 bedroom homes. And it's not matching what the young professionals are looking to move into or can afford to move into. So that has been a hurdle. But we actually worked with the local board of realtors to partially fund, and worked with Opticos Design with their Chicago team. We actually wrote the literal missing middle book to develop 2 straight zoning missing middle districts that were practical and realistic, because we already had that realtor builder kind of footprint into that to say, hey, if we zone it like this way, if we create the straight zoning district, can you actually use the zoning, or will you still be pushed into planned unit development type zoning where it's got to be more of a custom zoning? So that missing middle product typology is one we're trying to tackle. We have those zoning districts now. Part of the other issue of missing middle people don't talk about, because sometimes the industry likes to say it's a local government issue, right? We don't have the zoning there for them to use. That's true sometimes, right? I can move on that, but we have literally created the zoning and created it with them. But there's not a lot of builders, particularly when you look at national tract builders, that are building a whole lot of the missing middle, because they're looking at their traditional market research and what they know they historically could sell. And they're like, well, we know if we build the traditional 4 or 5 bedroom home, people will buy that still. So that is kind of a challenge we're working, but we're trying to, there's a local kind of builder group that's more focused here in Indiana, not just one, but pockets of them. And that's kind of the group we're really trying to build and cater towards, because that's the space that they're wanting to get into and seem to be collaborative. So that's definitely, I think, one of the challenges. Senior housing is one, right? We talked about missing middle being a part of housing our seniors, but straight senior housing, kind of as you age, we want people to age in place. We do have some senior housing, but getting the pro forma to work for senior housing isn't always the same as your traditional multifamily or other kind of living situation. So finding people that want to build that is challenging. But I think one of the ways we try to work around that, navigate that, comes back to those housing studies, the demographic studies, the market studies, and things that we're constantly refreshing, along with our retail gap strategies, like full market studies, really, so that when I go out to builders and developers, I can say, hey, I know you guys do your own research, your own data, but I'm like, this is something we look at holistically, year over year, constantly refreshing. This is our picture today. This is our needs today. This is why our community needs it, and why you can move this product if you build it here. This is why, like, it's going to work for your needs, and you can help us solve a community need for, like I said, our existing residents and our future residents. You have to build that ecosystem to grow and to maintain, to keep your people here. I want everybody who's a resident of Cumberland to be able to be a resident of Cumberland no matter what their life circumstances are. So, kid graduates from in one of our schools here, goes to college. I want them to be able to afford a house and come back here. Family has, a major portion of their income change or get lost. I want them to be able to afford to stay here and keep their families and their schools and be near their neighbors and their friends and not have to uproot and go somewhere else. If somebody has a new chapter in life where they are moving into, I want them to be able to upgrade here if that's what they want. I don't want them going to another community to upgrade their housing and their situation. Like I said, if somebody's retiring, I don't want them to not have a senior living situation eventually or a smaller home that they can downsize into. I want them to keep their Cumberland pride and that lifestyle and be a part of our community.
That's amazing, and I appreciate you being candid. Some of these issues are not easy, and they're multifaceted. One of the things you brought up was a housing study. Now, I hear I hear multiple angles on housing studies. Sometimes I hear they're super effective, and we're able to implement on them, and sometimes I hear they kind of sit on the shelf, and implementation doesn't move forward for a multitude of reasons. It sounds
That's
like
right.
you guys are consistently updating and utilizing. What makes the housing study actionable for you?
Large amount of time and education we put into it. Like there's a million housing studies. You hit on that like nail on the head, and some of them aren't worth the money spent on them or the paper that they're written on because it's just a fluff piece that it's like, here, this is a snapshot, right? This is a high level view. Or there's also cherry picked housing studies too, right? People can make numbers, tell the story that they want them to, whereas we are trying to be, here is the stark reality of our situation, even if it's not telling the story that maybe we feel like it should be at the time. We want to come back to that reality check for us, and we keep our elected officials and our appointed officials, our plan commission, involved in that conversation. So it's an educational piece for them as well. If we work on, housing studies that show we need more housing stock and you have no political will to build that housing stock, that study is worthless. Why did we spend the money? So if you don't have your elected officials and your plan commissions and your BZAs and RDCs educated throughout the process as to why they need this. And if you can't sell them the story or they aren't buying in, or it's just point blank, they don't want it, right? They may completely agree with it and say, I don't care, I don't want it. So you have to keep that collaborative process going. And you also have to check yourself as a public sector person with the private sector, right? Like that's part of the reason I'm taking that to builders, developers, realtors, and we include them in the process. Or you know, when I take it to them end result, they may say, hey, you missed the mark on here and here's why. And you have to react to that, not just blow it off and be like, I'll sell the next guy on it. You have to look into like, hey, are they right? Did we miss something here? Are we wrong? Because I mean, sometimes all of us are wrong, right? So
I think that makes sense. One thing that you said that stuck out to me, and yeah, I was laughing when you said it because I believe you are correct. If you don't have the political will, the buy-in, then the studies is useless, even if they may know that it is correct. But if that buy-in's not there, the implementation can kind of fall asleep there. But another thing you brought up was including builders in the process. Now, process is very important to creating housing units. I'd love to see if you have maybe an example of a housing project where you thought it was a no-brainer and then it fell through the crack for some reason and it ended up not working out. And then another example where you went through the process and it did end up working out. I'd love to see the juxtaposition of one that ended well and one that maybe was a challenge.
okay, let's see. Trying to think of one of the better challenge stories. So there's definitely challenges. There's a lot of successes. A good challenge can go back to some of our early missing middle stuff. This wasn't necessarily a specific housing project yet. We were meeting with a missing middle developer and we thought we were basically done with that. But there was an area where it's a hybrid of like form-based and text-based zoning. And part of the form that lays out how this could easily be dropped in wasn't buildable with one of our water utilities in the area. They said, hey, this actually can't be built how you formed it because the water meters requirements for townhouses with this water utility, they don't allow this. They've never allowed this. They never will allow this. So this whole section of your code will not work in the 85% of your town that falls within that water utility. So that was a very quick, like, oh, this is why we have to have people in the room through the process. There's been some other failures kind of in that missing middle front too, where we've kind of worked to kind of do front end site selection, pro formas, things like that on occasion in the past where we didn't have builders in the room because we're trying to create a palette for them. And we built like a map with parcels and things to go on there. But one of the pieces of land that was available, like we had looked at it from our traditional standpoints, utilities like floodplain and those type of things, but they were basically able to show us, hey, from our pro forma end, this piece of land or missing middle is never going to pencil. It's never going to, the capital stack will never work. And here's why. So understanding that developer finance piece became vitally important for us to reshape for how we are marketing the available land and those things. Good examples of successes are pretty much all the housing projects we have going forward now are pretty holistic neighborhoods where we got the developer together early. Some of them are ones we reached out to with kind of that mapping and said, hey, here's some land available in town, some desired housing uses, a mix of housing. And we told every builder and developer early, we want to build communities, not just houses, and we want to collaborate on that. And at first they just hear, oh, you want us to spend more money. And we're like, no, not exactly. We want to come up with creative strategic partnerships within this neighborhood that make it feel like it's flowing into the other neighborhoods in the community. And it's not a place where people drive their cars into their garage and then never see anybody in the town again unless they bump into them at grocery stores. So we get in with them and we'll do shreds and roundtables and figure out, hey, what does pencil? How can we have a blend of your most affordable project up to your estate level projects in the same neighborhood so everyone can work and live within that neighborhood? Then we say, hey, there may be an opportunity to partnership on a park here. You have these open space, green space requirements. How do we maybe model this and work together to create a community park versus just a neighborhood park that's checking the box? So we have a neighborhood called Parkview Village that is about ready to finish kind of its second phase of the project of 3. Not all built out, but moving through the development into the third phase. They're doing kind of 2 and 3 at the same time, but 2 is about ready to be handed over. We worked with them from day one to get them essentially a tax write-off through this program because they did a central green community park that will go all the way through, connects to multi-use path, like bike lanes, and to the front commercial retail area. As a part of doing that, they donated that land, got a tax write-off that helped their pro forma, and we were able to then take that partnership to DNR and get a land water conservation fund grant to build out the park with zero tax dollars, local tax dollars in the project, because the land donation for the developer, that's a write-off for them, is the in-kind match for our park build out for the community. So now you have this central park going through the neighborhood that connects to our greater trail and ecosystem that we're building out with playground connecting to commercial retail. You have entry-level housing next to an attainable housing, multifamily that flows through to estate homes, completely walkable, connected to where you can get anywhere in town with all these partners coming together for what's a really cool neighborhood, not just for the people who are going to live in that neighborhood, but for the entire community with new amenities that the people that live there and are going to live there and that live in the rest of the town, we didn't have to take any of their local taxes to put into that.
Wow. Yeah, that is one of those examples where everything aligned. You are able to create more housing. You're able to create community, create green space, and the developer wasn't screaming at you at the end. So,
Right.
wow. Yeah, if we can copy that across America, that would be great. But yeah, no, I think that's very cool. And one of the things that you said is, and I hate this, and I live in communities, and I've lived in these communities where you just kind of go, you pull into your garage, and that's kind of it. And then you don't have that community space, you don't have that walkability, you can't get into nature, and I disdain that. So I love that you guys were forward thinking, and I love that the development community decided to be partners with you guys, and you invited them to be partners. So I think that's very impressive. One thing I heard was donating land on the development side. Have you guys? Do you guys have any municipal land or municipal property that you guys have used to spark housing development?
We have land through the Community Development Corporation that the town formed as a 501 not for profit, economic development not for profit. And that kind of is the land kind of banking and economic development partner of the town government itself. The way it was structured for the CDC board, like a lot of communities that form community development corporations, there's different appointing authorities. The bylaws for our CDC says the town manager for the town of Cumberland is the appointing authority and executive director for that board. So the council gives me a lot of runway to work with that board and grants us funds for land acquisition. And they've granted us homes that we've worked with in development deals to get access to developers or redevelopment to smaller projects. We have a lot of actually cool projects in the area, but also we acquired 34 acres for a holistic mixed use development that we have development partners interested in through that partnership of the Community Development Corporation, the town of Cumberland directly, and the development community. So we're able to do lots of really cool things in there. It was when I told the story to my council of how it could help us grow and continue to influence our destiny rather than, just be a product of what's going on. They had concerns, obviously, of what if this group goes rogue, and that's how I talked about structuring it to where they report to the town manager. They're like, what if you go rogue? I'm like, that's why it says town manager, not Ben Lips. I'm like, you guys can fire Ben Lips for going rogue. So that's a really easy way to make sure you guys are protected all the way through, because I'm like, I'm going to have your backs. I'm not going to go rogue, but if I were, you guys control my livelihood, and I appreciate that.
Wow. Yeah. No, it sounds like you guys are really, really doing everything you can to make sure, and I mean the proof is shown, the amount of the development you guys have. Now I have two more questions, and then you're off the hot seat, and we can get you some gains. But one I just have to ask, 'cause it's been burning. You guys are going through a ton of growth. Outside of the community and the We Are Cumberland and Ben Lips, everybody loving Ben Lips. What is driving that growth? It seems like the community is about to double very soon here.
We are in a decent market location too, which helps drive a lot of that growth. We're on the Indianapolis metro area and have a lot of land availability. So there is desirable market there that helps that. But a lot of what's driving it really is political will, because the town's always been in a desirable location. And I've been with the town for but basically 2 decades now. I've been town manager for 5, and we weren't really experiencing housing growth despite having the geography that we needed for it. And a lot of that came down to political will and leadership on appointed side to educate the council at the time on the economics of it and just the need for growth to be stable and their long-term health of the community. So Cumberland actually had a pretty bad name in the development and builder community when I became town manager, and wanted to educate myself on that fully why, and then be able to work with my council to make recommendations and educations and figure out how we can bridge that gap with them having a desire for growth, but not understanding why it was coming here. So another practice we started to bridge that and kind of heal the relationship with that community was my first year as town manager. We held a developer roundtable, and we've actually held that year over year now, where we invite all the builders and developers in central Indiana to come talk with us in Cumberland, and we can share our vision with them, and they can tell us what's wrong with the vision or go check it out and shop it from there. But that year one was really, hey, tell us your issues with us. Like, what are all the things that we've done over the years that makes us growth not even applying here? Why aren't builders and developers even really applying to build here anymore? And a lot of that was intentionally zoning out development in the past, plan commission members and former council members berating developers and basically insulting builders and developers in that process, and not being as professional as maybe they could be, which there's a tendency sometimes in local government to assume that every builder and developer is trying to get one over on you and give you the worst product possible so they can make the max amount of money. And is there probably some truth in that? There's probably a little bit of truth in that in certain groups, but broad strokes is a problem that you see everywhere. You can't paint everybody into the same picture. You can't put everybody in one bucket. There's no one size fit all. And really, a lot of your builders and developers are people that are proud of what they're doing and designing. So you have somebody that their team has spent, sometimes up to 3 years developing a product line that they stand by. They're in it to make money, but they also want to stand by the product that they're selling. And then they get in front of councils or plan commission members that say, this is cheap garbage. I don't want this in our community. And yeah, they're going to rightfully have some feelings about that. So that was part of our issues with that. And then putting unusable zoning districts in place after the Great Recession back in 2008, to where everyone had to go PUD, which is pretty common nationally, where everyone's having to do planned unit development and a hybrid custom zoning for that time period. But some communities are very reasonable in that back and forth negotiation on a PUD zoning, and others use that to weaponize it just to shut down housing. And we were very much viewed that way, as it just difficult, and that we didn't want housing. Even though some of those people did want housing, they just weren't educated on how to navigate that. And frankly, we had some people in the past, like, just be purely transparent, candid, that were very respectful to the community. So I think a lot of it is just healing that relationship and inviting them in as partners and collaborators, and then putting the work into maintaining that relationship with year over year roundtables, and inviting them to be a part of the process to say right, wrong, or indifferent with what we're doing. So
that makes a ton of sense. And you actually answered my follow-up question. But so now you're officially off the hot seat. We are going to shift into our last chance games. So these come from improv. So just say what's on the top of your mind, and then I'll circle back and give you a chance to change your answer, strike it from the record if need be. But the first one, and I'll read my questions here. What is a policy that looks good on paper, but is almost impossible to execute in real life?
Policy that looks good on paper is almost impossible to execute in real life. Trying to go back over the years of things, because there's some things that you try to learn from. I will say at the moment, a real life example is we're trying to figure out we passed an ordinance for public safety nuisance policy, and the implementation that is difficult because it's difficult to track and enforce what's a nuisance call to a business and what's not. The idea is corporate interests not taking a huge tax burden from the taxpayers, but it's not impossible to implement, but it's one where we miss the mark on our legwork beforehand and actually building out the infrastructure to do that. So then I'm not sure if that's one I want, but we can come back.
Okay. What do developers understand about housing deals that municipal leaders or residents may miss? And then the complete inverse. What is something that municipal leaders know and developers may miss when it comes to housing deals?
Developers and builders, I think, miss sometimes the nature of the market, and they get lost in strictly what they see on CoStar and quick market research, and they don't always understand the actual geography and neighborhood typology, where one thing can be very different one block over from the next. So sometimes there's, their first sweep is so very just high level data driven that they'll write things off sometimes that they shouldn't. And I think what developers and builders know that communities don't is the realistic pricing of housing versus material cost and building all those things out. There's a lot of back and forth shuffle over what's driving housing shortage and housing insecurity, and it's a million different things. And there's a lot of different sides that get taken on that, but neither side seems to be willing to meet in the middle, because local government's saying you should be able to add this, and this to the house, no problem. $20,000 on the home price, you'll just tack that on and pass it through to sale. They know exactly how many people they're going to cut out for every, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 they out of the home. And local government doesn't always understand that picture, nor do we always believe the answer when we are told, hey, you're cutting out 35% of the market for this home by adding that in. So, and there's a lot of back and forth on that.
Get that. Now, before we go to our next questions, and these are fun because I get to give you some free money. Did you want to lock in the nuisance reports as the policy that is hard to implement in real life?
I do not want to lock that one in, because I'm like, we're already figuring out implementing it. I want to lock in one that is probably a reality nationwide at multiple levels of government, but for different reasons. And I will go with our newly implemented balanced budget policy. A lot of places avoid balanced budget policies. Some places do. They're not impossible, but when you're in a rapidly growing community like ours, the budget you set a year beforehand often is based off revenues that you're being conservative on. And when you're growing rapidly, your revenues are growing normally beyond that, and your needs are also growing beyond that. So you end up in a position often where you follow the balanced budget policy. You set a balanced, sustainable operating budget. Normally, you're really pretty close to that, but needs will come up, and you end up doing an additional appropriation to that original budget. Now, it's normally still balanced based off revenues and revenue growth, but it doesn't quite work on paper that way. Like, it's tricky because we're always passing a sustainable operating balanced budget, but we're always appropriating a bunch of money the past several years because the needs and rapid growth and changes. But we're also year over year adding money to the bank and trying to get people to understand those finances are sometimes tricky. They're like, well, you outspent your budget. Like, that's true. And they're like, you added $1 million to the budget. I'm like, well, that's also true. But I'm like, we also got $750,000 in grants, and our revenue outpaced our projections by, $550,000. So that $1 million is more than covered that we appropriated into the budget. And sometimes often with grants and things that aren't tax dollars.
Makes a ton of sense, and the nuances of trying to deal with the budget. Now that goes nicely into my final question, which is the budget question. So, if you had unlimited money, you had unlimited staff, unlimited resources for a year, you can just snap your fingers and alleviate one challenge or create an initiative, what would that challenge or initiative be?
It would be dumping it into redevelopment of our historic area of town, our Marion County area of town. We sit in two counties, Marion County and Hancock County here in Indiana. And we are actually getting control of Marion County, Indiana, due to a bunch of nuances with Indianapolis and Marion County being combined into a Unigov thing decades ago. We haven't had control over Marion County until January of next year. We will take it. So in this 1 year time frame, I would use it to acquire the properties that mean the most to the town or that need the most care. We have a historic church that is our kind of gateway at one end of the town that has been kind of vacant and blighted for about a decade now that we've wanted to acquire and redevelop. So it's actually the road it's sitting on is named after this historic church. It's on German Church Road. And it was built by German settlers of Cumberland, in the 1800s. So we would redevelop that site into something that benefited the community, potentially co-working, shared kitchen, things like that. We also have in Marion County, Cumberland, a large kind of blighted apartment complex that we've been going after previous owners and things for a while with the city because we haven't had full jurisdictional control, like I said, until January 27, meeting with the residents, trying to help the residents because it's been in a state of neglect. So we would take that and redevelop it so that you would have something that's benefiting the community, not displacing residents, but putting them into a environmental design that increases quality of life and safety and all the things that this neighborhood's not doing for them currently. To make it a happy, healthy place for them to be. And then our main historic core along US 40, dump into kind of the local business revitalization and those things, which incidentally, a lot of this is our focus already, but at unlimited resources and staff in 1 year, we get a lot done. We get a lot done in 1 year here anyways, but you give us that kind of resources and we'll move mountains.
I love that, and I believe that you would. I'm hoping for a large windfall of money coming your way. But Ben, before we close out, I'd like to give you the chance to say any last words to our viewers.
One, Jentry Co has the best theme music out of every government podcast. Told Jonathan that when we first talked, so I appreciate that. But I also appreciate what Jonathan's doing with the Jentry Podcast and trying to share stories from local government, state government, and people actually in government and make people understand that not everything you see on social media and the news is our reality in the day-to-day. And most government officials, workers are actually, your neighbors there trying to help each other and do the right things. And a lot of what you see in the world today is very dark and screwed up, but 99% of the people I know in local government are here because they want to help people. So I appreciate you, Jonathan, shining a light on that. That's an important issue to me. I think it's another step towards trying to move people back to civility. And I think we're doing good things. I appreciate that.
Pleasure, Ben. I appreciate it twofold. I appreciate you liking the theme song. Took a lot of time on that. And yes, the goal is to bring civility, to bring conversation, and to shine a light on people like yourself that are doing good work. So for everybody here at Jentry, I'd like to say thank you to you, Ben, and then to the viewers. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate you guys engagement, viewing, and providing us with more topics that we need to be asking. So again, I am your host, Jonathan Mason, and with me today was Ben Lips, who is the town manager of Cumberland, Indiana. Thank you so much and have a great day.